job submission infrastructure, that sort of thing. Now, by contrast, collaboration projects will often have their own infrastructure, that is their own pilot front ends, they have their own storage, they may have dedicated sites at their collaborating institutions that only allow certain virtual organizations in, and often do have their own support personnel in some cases as well. And so in this case, OSG is acting kind of as a partner. And then the general expectation is that when collaborations bring their resources to the table and use the OSG infrastructure and support, that they at some level then also make that available to the wider pool. No, doesn't let me change slides here. There we go. Okay. So as you can imagine, collaborations here of the size we're talking about, these might range from a couple dozen people, maybe up to order 1,000. So not quite as large as LHC, but at least same order of magnitude. They do require a lot more services than an individual researcher might. And as we had mentioned already, several of these things here, we're kind of talking about the support personnel as opposed to the infrastructure themselves, right? And it really runs a wide range in terms of what we see as far as support personnel attached to the collaborations themselves. Some projects that are maybe on the smaller side of, talking order dozens of people, they may have a few support personnel, but they don't necessarily have these large dedicated teams. And that's where one can run into trouble as far as making sure the infrastructure is all working and debugging problems when they come up. So in this case, OSG is kind of providing at least some of the support and especially training in terms of administrator training and help these collaborations grow into a situation where they can take on more of the day-to-day themselves. You can also go on the other end, right, where you have collaborations of size in the hundreds. And typically they are going to be attached to maybe a host laboratory or a large dedicated university team. In this case, it's more of a partnership in terms of OSG is trying to facilitate using the existing infrastructure that they may already bringing, as well as using the OSG to get to a wider pool of resources than they might otherwise be able to. Okay, so the collaboration support team really takes on a wide variety of tasks here. We talked about coordinating and facilitating already. So this might include anything from the initial onboarding, as far as explaining what the existing infrastructure is and best practices for using it. It might involve setting up compute elements or hosted compute elements, for example, at some level of storage, and how much storage that is, of course, can vary widely from project to project. Workflow management tools, some of those are available. Some of the collaborations will have their own, others will use kind of commodity solutions, Pegasus being one example. And then, of course, there's also the site support and documentation. Okay, now we have a new site or new collaborating institution coming into our project. How do we get them set up to work with the existing infrastructure? Or can we just point them to the very nice OSG documentation, for example, and each collaboration doesn't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. And a lot of the engagement happens with existing ticketing systems, and some personnel will go to different meetings from time to time. So as Pascal mentioned, we'll hear from another collaborations today, and they are supported by both the Open Science Group itself. Also hear from Fermilab supported experiments. Here we're talking really though about the non-LHC experiments. So CMS, for example, will be tomorrow. That, I believe, is all I have. And if there are any questions, we can take those now. And if not, we'll move on to the first talk.